Hey everybody, welcome to Motivational Wednesdays. So today's topic is going to be finding yourself where you left yourself. Subtopic, where did you get stuck at? Huh? Where were you broken and you just stopped right there? You kept living life. But you were not present. There's a difference, and it's something I've learned. There is a difference about being present and just moving. You're just moving along, but you're not coherent. You're not present in the moments, and you miss a lot about you, your family, your friends. You miss a lot of things, but you're just moving along. Something God showed me this morning, and how it happened was, I had a dream about a past relationship from like 10 plus years, and I haven't talked to that particular person in about that same amount of time as well. And forgive me, y'all, it's hot. And in the midst of that or whatnot, I wasn't in the midst of that. I wasn't, it was what it was, right? It wasn't a bad relationship. It didn't end bad. It was just two people really that crossed each other's paths for whatever the purpose was, right? So this morning, I'm like, God, why did I have that dream? Like, oh my God, like we finna cross paths again, like And so he was like, no, but let's talk about that phase. And so when we talked about the phase, it got on what attracted you to him. So we started talking about his characteristics, how he was insecure in himself. So when we got to that phase, then I started realizing, oh wait, snap. At around that phase in my life, that's when I started to become secure within myself. That's when I started to be comfortable in my early 20s with myself. And because things didn't necessarily pan out in the way that I fantasize for it to be, right? God just showed me like his purpose in your life at that time was to come pour into you the secureness that you were looking for. Because what you were looking for at that time was rooted into your abandonment wounds. But let's talk about it. You got stuck right there because that relationship over the time, and this was a few years off and on, it's something that you really wanted and it didn't happen. So instead of you sitting down, evaluating why it didn't happen or if it was supposed to happen, embracing that change, right? You got stuck and left yourself right there. And then you started settling for less. You started settling for counterfeit versions of what you actually desired, what you actually wanted. And you settle for that over years' time. Just like you got free will, he got free will. But you settled. So he said, all this is about finding yourself. Self-evaluation, you guys, is nothing but about finding yourself. This ain't about living your truth. I'ma live my truth. Ain't no truth but Jesus. But finding yourself in God. Finding yourself is not leaving God out of the equation. It's inviting him in the equation to really find out. It's just like this book I'm writing called Broken Pieces Are Masterpieces. Let me tell you why broken pieces are masterpieces. Because even though we're broken, he still calls us his masterpiece. Even though we're broken, he still calls us his masterpiece. And I have a quote in the book that I said, when you start picking up your broken pieces, it feels like you're picking them up alone and you're doing it on your own. But if you look up, for the good word says, this son will not leave me alone. Girl, let me tell y'all. If you look up, the word of God says, I look to the hills, there lies my help. So even though you picking up pieces and you picking up pieces, don't pick up the pieces walking with your head down. Pick up the pieces and walk with your head up. I am so sorry, y'all, that that's so blurry. But walk with your head held up. Walk with in knowing that you are finding yourself. That your journey is a self-evaluation journey. And it's to evaluate, not just reflect on the last year or the last 6 months. It's to evaluate who you used to be, who you are right now, and where you're trying to go, and who do you want to become. And if that aligns up with the will that God has for your life. If you're a believer. Because if you're not a believer, then that's a different story. That's a different story. But it's still evaluating yourself. It's still self-evaluation. It's still that. So finding yourself, that good part of where did you get stuck at? A lot of us get stuck and our old selves get stuck back in our early 20s when we were in a good relationship, and for whatever reason, or we had a good partner, or whatever it was in a good business, that for whatever reason that didn't pan out in the way that we fantasized for it to pan out. But if you honest with yourself and your self-evaluation, you will look at, was I even ready? So for my situation, if he would have proposed back then in my early 20s, was I ready to be somebody's wife and stepmom? Because he had 2 kids. I didn't have no kids. And it wasn't that I didn't love kids or I didn't want kids. I just didn't have none at that time. Was I really ready to take on, to help somebody? Was I really ready for that? No. But when you walk through that self-evaluation, it really comes with a lot of forgiving yourself. Because something else that I saw was also that this is how bitterness becomes about. How does bitterness come about? When you cannot forgive yourself for allowing for somebody else to play in your face as long as they played in your face, and you finally realize that they was a fraud or imposter, or you finally dealt with what you needed to deal with you internally. So now you mad, but instead of going through that process and those emotions, being mad at yourself for a moment, but giving yourself grace, and then forgiving yourself for allowing that to happen, we project that on the other person in the relationship, and we project that in the way of, it's all his fault or her fault that this happened and I'm like this and my life is like that. If I would have never married them. No. Somewhere along the line, before you got real caught up in that web you getting yourself out of, you had to see red flags. The problem is, and this is where forgiving yourself come in at, because you chose to ignore. We all got free will. You chose to ignore the red flags. I chose to ignore red flags that I saw. So we all have free will. We all have choice. So I said all of that to say, because I know that was a lot. But I said all of that, you guys, to say that, oh my God, like I have to hold it up, y'all, because it's really glaring and I don't want it to be a blur. But I said all of that to say that be encouraged to have the courage to really find yourself where you left yourself. Be willing to dig that up and be willing to go to the root of the thing. Because the root of it ain't just because it didn't work out in a way I wanted it to work out. The root of it was I felt abandoned. That was the root. That was the root of it. Is that I felt abandoned. But in actuality, it didn't abandon me. We just went our separate ways. And that was my choice. And then that became our choice collectively to go separate ways because I wasn't willing to just deal with whatever. But then because of that insecurity of abandonment and not feeling wanted, then guess what? I settled for a piece of a thing when I deserved the whole of a thing. You know, that's like going to the steakhouse, and when you go to the steakhouse and you order a steak, and that's all you you order a steak meal. Just say you ordered a T-bone steak with some mashed potatoes and some cabbage or something on the side. And all they did was bring you out a cabbage, some cabbage. That's it. They didn't bring you the mashed potatoes with it. They said, here go your order, enjoy, thank you. And you looking like, wait a minute, this is just a side. This is a piece of something. Where's the rest of it at? And they like, oh, well, we ran out of the mashed potatoes. We don't have that no more. Okay, well, where the entree part? Where the bulk of it at? Where the meat at, right? And they like, oh, you know what? We don't have no steak no more. We had cooked the last steak for the order that came before you had ordered. Now you got a choice. You can either sit there, and it's probably not a good analogy, but this is what I feel. You can either sit there. Boy, this sun out so bright, baby. I could fry an egg on the ground at the moment right now. And I ain't never been able to do that in California, but it's so bright out. But, so just say, that's what you did, right? You have free choice. Now, they could tell you, no, you gonna pay for that cabbage. And you like, I'm not paying the same price I would pay for a whole meal. Or you allow for them to handle you however they want to handle you, and you still pay the bill anyway. You have a free choice to be like, you know what, y'all can take that back, I'm not paying for that. Or you could sit and settle for the cabbage and miss out on the rest of the meal that would have satisfied you. Now, I know some people gonna be on here and be like, well, cabbage, I love me a cabbage. Remember, the cabbage is not the entree, it's the side. So that means you got a spoon full of cabbage. And in the restaurants, if you ever worked in a restaurant, you should know that spoonful of cabbage is not the big spoonful of cabbage that you got in your kitchen. That spoonful of cabbage is like half of that spoon on your plate. It's not so satisfying you. You're still going to be hungry. You're still going to be hungry. So you have the free will and the free choice to either choose to eat that piece of a cabbage, that piece of a meal, and pay the same price that you would have paid for the whole meal. Or you guys get up and say, you know what, y'all can have that. Y'all should have told me that before I ordered. I'm not paying for anything because this is not what I ordered, and get up and walk out. That's what happened. So I said all of this to say, when you go through your self-evaluation, one, forgiving yourself is very important, because when you self-evaluate, it really messes with you. It really messes with you when you self-evaluate, and you can get to the point where you kind of low-key condemning yourself if you don't show yourself grace and mercy in the midst of it. And that's why you add God in your self-evaluation. And when you're ready, you start walking down that road of finding yourself, finding where you left off at, finding where did you stop at, finding how did I stop? How did I stop doing this? How did I stop doing that? How did I stop pursuing my dreams? How did I stop writing? Start finding out why you have the habits that you have. And when you start getting to the root of it and you start breaking that apart, that's where you start seeing that piece of you shine more and more and more until you shine with the glory. I seen a movie with the glory of God. I'm gonna say this. I seen a movie of Woody Woodpecker where they was looking for the gold. I think it's Woody Woodpecker too. They were looking for the gold. The great-great-grandpapa left the gold. Everybody thought that the gold was up under the statue. It took somebody who was having an emotional issue, thinking that he screwed up and messed up and couldn't to forgive himself, to knock on that wood, only to realize that to knock on that statue, only to realize that the statue was the gold the whole entire time. This is you taking that chisel to every piece of you to find out where did you go. So my question to you is, where did you get stuck at? I know y'all can't see me too much because the sun is right behind me, but where did you get stuck at? Have a great and blessed day, and I pray that this encourages you. Bye.